Hi everyone. Welcome to the Individual Artist Awards informational meeting hosted by BAM as well as Rasmuson. Thank you guys for having us today and having us here to be able to provide some information for you guys and also listen. So I just wanted to start off with a land acknowledgement. So my name is Tristan Uganark Morgan. I am an indie rock artist, and I just wanted to acknowledge that a lot of us are gathering on Denina Eflena, Denina Athabaskan land, and wanted to give a special thank you, a koi nakbuk, to the Denina peoples for allowing us to gather on their land today. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it off over to Bam to go ahead and start this meeting.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that land acknowledgement, Tristan. My name is Amable Rosa. I am one of the 3 curators in BAM, which is a acronym for Black Alaskan Art Matters. Some of you may know what the purpose of Black Alaskan Art Matters was if you tuned into the exhibit that we had in the fall. If not, we will go ahead and give a briefing sometime this evening. But I'll pass it on to MoHagani, who's one of my other curators.
Yeah, I am MC MoHagani Magnetek, BAM, Black Alaskan Arts Matter. And yes, we are a trio of curators, a trio of artists that came together last fall for one of a kind, the first of its kind of virtual art show featuring Black Alaskan artists throughout the state. And it was a very, very successful event. We had a good time in the days leading up to it and discussing art and choosing the art that was going to go there. We had a very successful event with the artists that were featured throughout the weeks that it was going for a few weeks or a month. However, it was a good time though. And so yeah, we'll pass it on to Alyssa, Quintyne.
Thank you, MoHagani, and good evening, everyone. My name is Alyssa Quintyne, and I am a creative here in Fairbanks and one of the 3 curators for BAM. And I'm just so happy to see all sorts of new faces across our state. And I am really happy for what this workshop will create in terms of, a more general conversation of how can we best be supporting our creatives of color.
Absolutely. Thanks for that introduction, Alyssa. Let's go ahead and pass it over to Tristan. Tristan just did the land acknowledgement, and I'll allow Tristan to introduce themselves.
Again, hi, my name is Tristan Uganark Morgan, Program Fellow with Rasmuson Foundation. I'm in a 2-year fellowship, so this is my 2nd year in my fellowship and 2nd year helping out with the Individual Artist Awards. Also a practicing indie rock artist based here in Anchorage, Alaska. And I will go ahead and pass it to Enzina Morari.
Thank you, Tristan. And thanks so much, Amable, MoHagani, and Alyssa. My name is Enzina Morari, she, her. I am also a multidisciplinary practicing artist and a program officer at the Rasmuson Foundation and work alongside Tristan to work on this program. We're so excited to be in this virtual space with you all this evening and look forward to the conversations that come out of this info session. I also wanted to shout out and acknowledge other foundation staff on the call. We have Karen Lowell, who provides direct program support and artist support. So if any artist has any questions about the application or even about whether or not the type of work they do would qualify for them for the award, Karen works directly with artists. And then we have Zuli Mason, who is program support as well. Zuli has been involved with the Individual Artist Award program for many years. So with that, we also have Leslie Ishii here, who represents Perseverance Theater. And we'll hear from Gail Jackson later on in the presentation, but we're so lucky and honored to have a previous Individual Artist Award recipient on the call with us today. So now I'm going to share my screen, so apologies for some of the transition, and turn it over to our co-host, to tell us a little bit more about Black Alaskan Arts Matters.
Absolutely, I'll go ahead and jump into that. Black Alaskan Art Matters, or BAM for short, made of 3 curators, MoHagani, MC, MoHagani, Magnetek, and Alyssa, and myself. And we kind of came together with the help of Perseverance Theater last fall. We wanted to create and uplift the marginalized voices, specifically of the Black community in Alaska, for artists, and create a platform which was provided by Perseverance Theater. So thank you very much. We wanted to create an exhibit for artists across the state to give the opportunity for artists that haven't had the chance, or haven't had the chance to, haven't had the chance to easily exhibit their art, to easily express themselves. And I'll give it off to Alyssa if she wants to add on anything there.
For sure. Thank you, Amable. We definitely recognize, not only in our personal experience, but statewide, that there was a representation gap in, how art is expanded throughout our state, to who is highlighted in galleries, to who is jurying shows, to who is, hosting events and owning art, professional artistic spaces, everything from residencies to First Fridays. And so with this exhibit, we really wanted to open that conversation up for not just our artistic community in the state, but to really provide a platform for creatives of color that may not see themselves as artists, or have had a really hard time breaking into, these professional settings, seeing themselves as art, as artists and art, because human beings are, so beautiful and artistic already. And also, being recognized, having their genres being recognized as fine art within these different disciplinaries, to even just getting paid for their work and being credited for their work. We wanted to really start that conversation, and even just, archiving some of these creatives, because when you look into Alaskans history, in terms of, the first Black artist, the first Black gallery owner, things of that nature, nothing pops up. And we know that that's not true because we've seen it ourselves. And so we wanted to create a platform where we could start that conversation, and we can, really materialize that history, and sort of connect these little pockets of, similar efforts before I was born, and just really wanting to offer that space for Black Alaskan creatives.
Yeah, and I'll add on to say that this archival work we found is very important. As Alyssa mentioned, that there's little record of a Black Alaskan artist that so far I would say that we've been able to recover beyond 2016. Everything else is kind of word of mouth in town. Oh, somebody did this, someone did that a long time ago, but where are those records, And I mean, once quarantine is over or something, if I'm able to go to the library and really start digging through some archives, I know that there are newspaper clippings out there. There's some other information out there. So we're also about preserving Black Alaskan Arts Matter too. So we value our history, and we value our present. And we're here tonight because we value the future. And we realize that once we begin this conversation of amplifying, promoting, and creating opportunities for Black Alaskan artists, here's another opportunity for us to help do that by helping people to get their individual artist awards, packaged together for the Rasmuson individual awards. So this is kind of like where we at this evening. And what our charges this evening is to, do our best to help encourage and get more people to apply, and then we'll have more, maybe, some good winners and some solid representation. And speaking of winners, we have some beautiful past winners, that are here this evening too. That would love to chop it up with y'all, tell us about their experiences as winners of past individual artist awards.
Absolutely. And before we go ahead and introduce those past winners, we're going to go ahead and go through the agenda that we have this evening. Let's see. So we've done introductions, of course. We are partnering with Rasmuson Foundation to kind of get an outreach for the Individual Artist Awards program. As you can see, is everyone else's screen sharing? Awesome. For some reason, my screen is a little frozen, so I apologize for the mishaps. I hope I'm not frozen.
Oh, Amable, we just lost your mic.
There we go. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. So having some difficulties here. Tis the season, or tis the Zoom call. I'm not sure. But yeah, as you guys can see, the agenda here laid out very simply. We will be sharing with Enzina and Tristan, of course, and we will be co-hosting between the 5 of us. And if at any moment you guys have any questions, I want to allow the space or allow you guys to put those in the chat, and we will eventually get to that at the end, of course. But with that being said, I will pass it on to Enzina and Tristan.
Great. Thank you so much, Amable. Yeah, so, tapping back into what Alyssa, Amable, and MoHagani were saying about representation, every year we look at the program and we look at the Individual Artist Awards and take information on how we can do better and how we can make the program more accessible to artists, how we could increase our outreach. We look at things that maybe weren't effective in the past that we can do better. And one thing we noticed over the last several years, not just a kind of fluke last year, was an underrepresentation in several different categories, whether it's award disciplines, so the type of art, whether it's performative or visually based. We've noticed underrepresentation in groups of people, whether it's artists of color or artists in specific regions in Alaska. This is a statewide program, and it is not intended to be Anchorage centric, but a lot of the applications we get in are from Anchorage artists. So what we've done this year is really look at that underrepresentation and think about our role in that and realize that if artists in these variety of communities are not applying, it's because we're not serving those communities appropriately. And so this year we've reached out to several different groups to provide some outreach to communities in hopes that this program is more accessible and that folks will apply, and then ultimately the award recipients will better reflect the broad diversity of Alaska and the amazing artists across all spectrums. In just a few moments, we'll talk about over the last few years, Black artists that have received awards, and you'll see compared to the full spectrum of awards, the lack of representation there. And that's true across several disciplines. So now, Alyssa spoke a little bit about this in the beginning, but I really want to bounce it back to BAM to start us off in a brief conversation about the challenges and strengths and needs. We heard a little bit about that from MoHagani, talking about the lack of historical content, capturing the impact of creatives of color. But we have lots of challenges on our end as well. And I want to bounce it to BAM to speak a little bit about their experience and in their work, what they've seen with access to these types of programs.
Sure, and I can kick us off here. So I guess my trade would be more visual artist. I do, I'm more in the painting and drawing scene. I do a lot of event coordination here in Fairbanks locally. I've done shows in Anchorage and parts of Southeast as well. And I would say that the biggest challenge, is really access in A, being seen as a professional artist, and B, our art being seen as fine art in the different disciplinaries of different programs. And so we are often not selected because we are not seen as we're not seen as career artists, we're seen as hobbyists, or we're seen as artisans, or our genres or mediums are not even, are not even on the list of what's eligible or what's not. We don't have enough experience. We don't have a portfolio. We don't have a website. We don't have things. So it's really about access and representation. A lot of artists may not have the funds to get a professional portfolio. They don't have the know-how or the knowledge to make sure that things look to someone else's eyes, to a juror's eyes, to a grantor's eyes, to a residency approver's eyes, that this is professional, this meets the qualifications. And we don't know who to go to. We don't know that there's a lot of grants out there. We also see the representation of those boards themselves, and a lot of them are lacking diversity. And so we kind of look at that and we're like, are they really going to see me as me, and they're really going to see my art as my art, or are they going to tokenize me? Or are they going to, they're going to give credit for, beating, for example, to someone else that doesn't belong to that culture, and we are never getting that credit and we're not being awarded. So a lot of us stay back because we don't know if these spaces are actually really safe and if they're actually going to actually see us. And so that is definitely what I have seen specifically in the interior, and helping creatives of color sort of break through, get their first Friday out there, start applying for grants, even if you're not going to get it, just getting your name out there, getting your image and your story out there, so people start to be like, oh, okay, this is another artist in the scene, this is someone I need to look out for. And it's really, really challenging, especially for young creatives of color, because they're, experimenting with all sorts of things. And, a 40-year-old gallery owner is, unfortunately, what I've seen, doesn't take us seriously. And kind of sucks, because our art's cool and our stories are like necessary.
Absolutely. And I mean, I couldn't agree with Alyssa more. I mean, you took a lot of the words that I wanted to say right out of my mouth. So yeah, it really falls heavily on visibility and validity. Wondering if your art is even worth it, or understanding and being recognized as an artist, not because you are a BIPOC individual, but more so for your art. And understanding that these spaces also include us. So yeah, thanks for that, Alyssa. I'll go ahead and pass it on to MoHagani so that she can go into the history.
Yeah. I mean, the history is very important. And like I say, so far, and amongst other things, I'm gonna say I'm a literary artist, I'm a performance artist. However, I'm also an archaeologist, historical archaeologist for over, goodness gracious, close to 30 years now. Lord have mercy, I just turned 45 last week. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, but nevertheless, I've been a historical archaeologist for a long time. And most of my work as an archaeologist has been focused on African American art. And one of the things that we find, and that we found in putting together the Black Alaskan Art Matters art show, is that many of our people don't even know if what they're doing or consider what they're doing is art. Like one of my friends, when I shared the Facebook information yesterday, was like, does my art count? And she cooks, she bakes cookies, Then we had a big conversation about content artists, and where do they fall in the mix of things. Hair and textiles, those are all indicative to who we are as artists. Another thing that we often saw very problematic, and there's a lot more history out there than we know, but for many of us, it's just not this opportunity to produce art leisurely. It has to make money for us. It has to do something. If it don't make dollars, it doesn't make any sense. And so, you know, it's just like the art that we often create maybe comes off as like promotional or something, or entertaining in anything, because we're trying to do our best to like earn a living at the same time. So not having those luxuries, not having those spaces, and this is what, you know, awards and fellowships is good for, because it provides artists the resources they need to totally get involved and dig deeper into art. And as, you know, more awards like these and opportunities are presented to us, and we take those and expand those, it gives us time to grow as artists. Now I must say, and be real, you know, the reason why we're here now is because Black people are in style, you know. And I say that because, like, I mean, as a literary artist and everything, up until this past year, no one gave a damn about MC MoHagani Magnetek. I wasn't being invited to the, you know, little writers circles and conversations for little special panels and stuff. They didn't care that I had poetry slam been going on 2 years or whatever, and decided to put that on the menu of programs that they have going on. Until recently, those things wasn't there. Well, and I'm just the type of person, like, I'm, you know, preparation plus opportunity equals success. And it is something, you know, I like to share. It's like, maybe those opportunities wasn't there before, but we've been preparing a long time here now. And now, you know, that's the spaces for us to have success. So, and knowing times are changing, attitudes are changing about Black arts, Black Alaskan arts, is also the time for us to, like, you know, take advantage of the you know, what's here and move forward, so we can face those challenges and we can strengthen ourselves and we can get those much needed things that we need to continue to produce the great works that we create.
Great. Thank you all so much. And we also want to encourage you that if there's a particular challenge or strength or need that wasn't mentioned, to please put that in the chat as well. We really want to be open to that and hear directly from artists what their experiences are. And we just wanted to kind of introduce the Individual Artist Awards by highlighting and spotlighting a few artists of color that have received awards in the last few years. We have Gail Jackson, who's here with us tonight, and we'll share a little bit about her experience shortly. Sean Northover, who's an R&B musician, he received a project award just last year. He was also on Hometown Alaska recently talking about his project, and you can download that link. And then Stephen Blanchette, who is Yupik and Black and one of the performers for Pamua, which is a really fantastic music group in town. And, you know, just a real, there's only 3 images on this slide, and that's from 2017 to 2020. And that just demonstrates how we have been underserving outreach and access to that community. I also wanted to give a snapshot of applications per discipline. One of our challenges and one of our weaknesses is that we have not captured demographic data historically for this program. It's something that we're shifting and we're going to start doing. But the only data we've collected from artists who haven't self-identified is their discipline. And you can see that visual arts, these are just project awards. There are 2 categories that we'll talk about. But in project awards, 56 of all of the total were from visual arts. So it's always visual arts heavy. And we know that there are so many different ways of making and creating and practicing art that are not represented. Last year, we had 1 application in performance art. And MoHagani was just talking about how she's a multidiscipline artist working in spoken word and literary and performance. And we know there's more than just 1 person across the state working in that realm. And the same with choreography. Only 3 total applications from choreography. We know there are more than 3 amazing dance artists. When we look at fellowships, it's very similar, you can see, and we'll talk about the distinction between a project award and fellowship in just a few moments. But again, it's super heavy in visual arts. And we love visual artists. We're not saying anything negative about visual arts, but we know that the perception, and I think I might have heard this in what Alyssa was saying, the perception about this program is very much connected to visual arts. And we want to communicate that we honor and acknowledge a variety of creative practice and art making. So real briefly, I just wanted to touch on the Rasmuson Foundation and what the foundation is. I know some of you on the call might be familiar with the foundation and some might not. But the foundation is a philanthropic family foundation. And the overall mission is to make a life better for Alaskans. And the foundation has its roots in Yakutat, Alaska. Jenny Olson Rasmussen had actually immigrated to the United States and was a missionary in Alaska in the 50s. She met her late husband, E.A. Rasmussen, who was also an immigrant to the United States. And E.A. traveled to Yakutat to be a teacher. They married, and then they went on, and their family went on to be in the banking business. So that's where a lot of the fortune that started the foundation began. The foundation has been rooted in arts and culture since those early times. Elmer, who was the son of Jenny and E.A., was a banker, but he also had a love and a commitment to keeping Alaska Native and Indigenous arts and artifacts in Alaska. And he saw that lots of out-of-town folks would come and buy work and take it out of Alaska. And so the Alaska Heritage Museum was started to preserve Alaska arts and artifacts and keep them in the state. And then one of the programs that was started, the foundation invests in lots of different areas. It's not just arts. They invest in homelessness, in education and healthcare, in social services, in lots of different human service-based sectors. But in 2004, the board made a commitment to preserving arts in Alaska and started an arts initiative. And this is an arts initiative that covers individual artists, as well as supporting arts and culture organizations and arts in the community. And when the foundation was thinking about the best way to invest in arts and culture, they realized that putting money directly into the hands of artists was the best way to do that. And so that's what created the Individual Artist Awards program in 2004. And I will let Tristan, I'll pass it over to Tristan to speak about the purpose of the program.
So the purpose of the Individual Artist Awards are really to allow a dedicated amount of time and resources for serious artistic exploration and growth. And just a note here, we understand that a lot of artists, especially in Alaska, are not full-time practicing artists. And we want to make sure that you know that, that we know that, and definitely for the serious exploration, that is over the course of a year. So the grant is over the course of a year long. And it's really to strengthen Alaska's cultural resources, and not just for Alaska Native cultures, which we do get a lot of grant applications from the Alaska Native communities, but there are even people within the Alaska Native communities that we don't reach either based off of their lack of internet access and so forth. But since 2004, we have provided over 550 grants to artists, representing over 50 communities throughout Alaska. And the 3 awards that we're going to be talking about are going to be the Distinguished Artist Awards, the Project Awards, and the Fellowship. And that'll be in the next slide. So just a quick shout out to Lily Hope. She is an Alaska-based artist who has created all of these award necklaces. So even the award necklaces are made in-house. And we have the Fellowship Awards and the Project Awards. And those are the ones that we want you guys to all focus on, because the Distinguished Artist Award has already passed. That nomination process already passed, and it's completely separate from the Fellowship Award and the Project Award. So that's by nomination. That nomination process happens, I believe, starts in November. So if you do have a distinguished artist in mind, an artist who has been creating for decades and who has provided a lot to the community, definitely keep them in mind and nominate them for that award. But the two awards that we want you to focus on are the Fellowship Award and the Project Award. The Fellowship is the larger one, it's unrestricted, and that's for $18,000. And then the Project Award is the smaller award of $7,500, and that's for they're both for short-term projects, but that one is for a little bit less of exploration in terms of like research or gathering kind of gathering things to help you propel you forward as an artist. This is the project base is just it's a smaller amount, and it's also a little less competitive because it's 25 grants as opposed to the 10 grants for the fellowship. And the artist career stages are emerging, mid-career, and mature, and those are the three stages that we allow you to self-identify as. And it's also kind of up to that's subject to your change. So if you are a mid-career artist, really that's going to be someone who's established in their practice, and isn't an emerging artist is someone within a 5 years of creating work. So that is kind of based off of how you feel as an artist, and know that a lot of artists don't even consider themselves artists. So how are you going to distinguish which career stage you're in if you don't even see yourself as a practicing artist? And that's where we come in and provide that support. Karen being the first person that you'll most likely get in contact with, who can help you kind of go through what artist career stage you are in. And we are within the application period. The online application is due March 1st, and there are some other dates to keep in mind. Zena?
Thank you, Tristan. So just to expand a little bit, I want to be mindful of our time so we can get to the questions that you have. But I just wanted to expand a little bit because these are the two awards to focus on this year. The project award, like Tristan said, is $7,500. It is available to all artistic disciplines. We have 11 that are identified and artist has to select, but any discipline can apply for a project award each year. And like Tristan mentioned, they're for a short-term project, something that can be achieved within a year. There's a ton of flexibility in what a project looks like. Some people might use that to buy a bunch of equipment to do their work. Some people might do that to put on a show. So it varies. Some people might do that to attend workshops. So it really varies what a project is. And a budget is required to meet that $7,500. It's a flat grant. And so the application requires you to show where that money is going. And there's some challenges with figuring that out too. And Karen's a whiz at helping kind of parcel out different costs with projects. And then as Tristan mentioned, there are 25 project awards each year. And I will say that this is a highly, highly competitive process. There's about 300 to 500 total applications each year and only 35 total awards. So it's not needs-based, and we acknowledge that there is a lot of need right now, especially with COVID and how COVID has really impacted artists, and that there aren't enough resources available. And so we acknowledge that, but this program is still rooted in the competitive nature. And before I move over to fellowships, I do want to give Gail an opportunity to share her experience. Gail was a project award recipient in 2017.
Good evening, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here amongst you all. I thank you, Rasmuson, for this platform, and BAM for emceeing and taking us through this process. The Rasmuson Foundation, for those of you that aren't familiar with my art form, I'm a sound artist, which means I focus and study on sound using the gong, and it has progressed into moving to the outdoors of Alaska, and I will be applying for a fellowship this year. Lots of folks that attended my events were asking me if I had any CDs, and no, I don't have any CDs. So part of my fellowship will be to produce CDs to continue to share my art form. When I applied for the Rasmuson Foundation, before I applied, I looked at past recipients and noticed the lack of color on stage. And also in my events, I noticed the lack of diversity in my events. And my focus last year and the year before that was to bring it to the Mountain View, Fairview community and to move around Anchorage with my gongs to introduce folks to another art form, because my art form is a non-traditional art form, which when people hear art, they think about sculptures, poetry, canvas, the traditional art forms, and mine does not fit that. And one of the Rasmussen staff helped me to put my art form in a category so that I was able to receive the project award. And so due to the fires and then COVID, that kind of put a dampening on me getting out into the community. But having the Rasmussen Foundation, the project award in my resume kind of put the letters after my name to give me more credibility out in the community, even though in myself, I know I have that credibility, but for those that need that, it was there. And my art form has taken off to working with businesses in order to relieve their staff stress management. And also I was invited to perform at the Let Every Woman Know, the cancer conference that they have for cancer survivors and caregivers. So my art has progressively moved up. And the Rasmussen Project Award was a springboard for that. And then in 2019, I was able to go to a Gong Summit, which was the first ever in the United States, where there were other gong players and gong makers from all over the world. For those that could get in, we had some presenters in India that were not able to get in. And at that summit, I met other gong players. And also I was invited to be on a women's panel to explain what I do as a female gong player to the whole audience there. And that was a really big honor for me. And after that conference, I was named and asked to plan the next Gong Summit, which would have happened this year in Europe. But we ended up having it online because the momentum and the power and feeling behind what was happening was so great that we wanted to continue. And I think it's very important to have that balance in our lives with our work, our life, and our art so that we're able to focus on our art without depleting our sources. And also community is very important, to have the community which uplifts us and supports us, whether it be family, a spiritual community, a community of like-minded folks. And now that I still work a full-time job and I have Mondays off now, and I'd like to take my gongs into the schools so that the kids there can experience what sound is physically and be able to collaborate and play the gong themselves, and to be able to embrace and get to know another art form, as well as being a role model in the African American community. And if it speaks to your heart, by all means, what do you have to lose than to apply? Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Sorry about that. I didn't take the screen share off while you were talking. I have a gallery view. I was so mesmerized by what you were saying. Thank you so much. I want to give us some time for questions. So I think we'll just talk about a couple of more things and then we'll open it up. So in addition to that project award, Gail mentioned she's going to be applying for a fellowship this year. And the fellowship is an $18,000 grant. And this is really open. So it's unrestricted, meaning it doesn't need to be as structured as a project. It could be for anything the artist wants to do to kind of propel them forward or advance their career. It could be from building a studio or traveling and doing research about the roots of your practice, the roots of your heritage, etc. So it's pretty open. It is open to mid-career and mature artists. So Tristan mentioned kind of that emerging mid-career to mature. And so it is open only to artists that have been working at more of an advanced stage in their craft or in their practice. And this can be assessed in a couple of different ways. It doesn't always mean you've had a certain number of shows or you've had, your work presented or sponsored. It could be artists that have been working for several years in their craft or working under a mentor or something to that effect. And it is more competitive than the project awards, that there are only 10 fellowships each year. And the disciplines vary from year to year for the fellowship. So in project award, all disciplines can apply each year, but in fellowships, it's only half. And this year it's choreography, so dance-based arts, original dance-based arts, crafts, folk and traditional arts, arts rooted in culture and tradition of the artist, literary arts, script work, so written works, and then performance-based arts. So this is super open. And Gail, I think this is the category that you applied in for your project award, is performance arts. So the disciplines are really open. And before we turn it over to questions, I'll ask if Tristan wouldn't mind walking us through the disciplines.
So there are 11 disciplines that can be applied under in the fellowship. And again, those 5 for the project award, and then those 5 for the fellowship. And we understand that a lot of these are going to overlap. And that's where you have that multidiscipline kind of piece in there. But there might be your work might, or your practice might go under folk and traditional arts, and it might also go into presentation and interpretation. So it's really up to the artist to look through all of those artistic disciplines, look through all the descriptions, and really hone in on which discipline they feel they're most represented in. So presentation interpretation might happen. It might also be, you might also go into choreography. So really go onto the website, download the guidelines for the individual artist award, and just read through all of those artistic disciplines. And if you have any sort of question, please reach out to us. And if you don't even know where to start, can definitely get an idea of what you want to do and where we can suggest where you would fit in. So just keep in mind for the fellowship, it does switch every year. But for the project award, for that $7,500, that's available to all 11 disciplines. Yeah, I'll just end with that. I don't want to go too much into our question time.
Yeah, I know. So I will, I just put a prompt in there. Folks can put in the chat some questions to start us off. And I'll just I'm going to stop my screen share. I'll just make a couple of notes as folks are giving us some questions. So the one change that we made last year was that we opened it up to groups and collaboratives. So it doesn't necessarily need to be an individual artist any longer. It can be a group, so more than one person working together on a project, and that it is eligible to folks who are 18 and older, who are Alaska residents, have been a resident for 2 years, and commit to being a resident for the year after. So similar to PFD guidelines. All right, so with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I will turn it over to the BAM curators to guide us through a Q&A.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you. I was looking at the chat and I see a couple of questions here. I see one that says, can you apply for both awards at the same time? Do you want to go ahead and answer that, Enzina?
Sure. No, that's a great question. So you can only apply for a project award or a fellowship. And in kind of the same way, you can only apply as an individual or as part of a group or collective. So only one application each year.
Another question that we have is how and who grades the arts? Is it on a scale 1 to 10?
That's a great question. So the project award and fellowship are not decided by Rasmuson Foundation staff. So Tristan and I do not make those determinations. Every year we gather a panel of experts that represent artists, that represent folks who work in the community, that represent organizations and institutions, and they're all from outside of Alaska. So we try to have everyone on a level playing field. Alaska is small and the artist community is smaller, and to have everyone start off in the same place, we start off with a panel of experts. And that panel is representative of Alaska. So we work hard to get a panel that is diverse in terms of representation, in terms of their discipline, in terms of age, in terms of their experience. And so they are folks that are doing this work and are rooted in this work. And the panel process is pretty thorough. So panelists will review disciplines. So if it's a choreographer as a panelist, they will review the choreography applications, and each panelist will on their own review the applications and select the applications they want to kind of advance or talk about. And then the second round is all of the panelists working within the same discipline. So we might have 2 choreography panelists. They'll meet together, review all of their applications, and select a group that they want to move to a semi-finalist round. And then that all of the panelists and the disciplines do this. And then that final round are all of the panelists together. We typically have around 14, all of the panelists together reviewing the semi-finalists. And last year, Zuli, correct me if I'm wrong, we let artists know if they made it to that semi-finalist round, and we hadn't done that in years before.
Yeah, we made a note in the panel comments. So if you select to receive panel comments, you'll see if you made it to that semifinal round. You can opt out of receiving panel comments if that's something that you're not interested in, or you can sign up for them.
Yeah, and so it's a full discipline. All 14 look at the those kind of semi-finalists and make the determination. So it's a several stage process.
And it's also not numeric. It's interesting how the decisions are made through conversation and lively conversation.
Oh, sometimes artists of ethnic background is judged because their work is not a representation of their culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I say as a literary writer, I think I've run into some roadblocks with these panels where, you know, you send in your work, whatever, your name is not attached to it or anything like that. However, once you start reading my work, you know this voice is not, you know this voice is MC MoHagani Magnetek. There's no denying it's my own voice. It sounds like no one else's. Well, you know, that's a door in literary writing community. You know what I'm saying? It's hard for me to breach because they're looking for this traditional English way of speaking. And I deliberately, you know, I can speak English very well, you know, sometimes. However, but as a writer, I intend to bring in a lot of traditional African motifs, themes in there, the writing styles, and that speaks out. And then, you know, I think that's graded heavily. And that's a result of the people choosing these awards are not representing the people they're looking to represent. You know, it's just this little group of old crusty white dudes or whatever and stuff. figuring out these awards. I mean, I guess it's how it's been traditionally. I guess
Yeah.
it's a crusty elder people too now, but nevertheless, crusty people, you know, checking out fresh awards just don't really work well. So we need fresh
Yeah.
people checking out these awards.
You know, and I will say, our panelists are, you know, Karen's talked about this. Our panelists are doing the work, they're in the field, and we work hard to have representation in our panel. And, you know, we're working on inviting panelists this year, and are really mindful of making sure that the panelists who are reviewing the applications represent folks who are going to be applying. And more than half of the panelists we're inviting this year are artists or professionals of color. And we want to make sure that that representation is there. Not all of them have confirmed that they're going to serve this year, but you know, we hear that, and we want to make sure that the panelists are there. I also want to touch on the other part of Vani's question. Every panelist will reviews the application differently. Some look at the work right away and make kind of immediate decisions based on the work, like, oh, this is an artist I want to come back to and look at. Some artists look at the narrative. They might look at the project first. Some artists look at the artist statement first. Or excuse me, some panelists look at the artist statement first. So it varies based on the panelist process. But what they're looking for is kind of a consistency in all of it. You know, a consistency in the statement. It matches the work. You know, the artist is talking about the work they're doing. The project or concept they're proposing matches that work. And then the images match that work. And so they're really focused on the work. And that's where a lot of the conversation happens. You know, one thing I will say is that we do have a category, and artists can self-identify this, for folk and traditional arts. So artists that are doing work rooted in their culture. And in that case, then the panelists are looking at that to make sure that that is rooted in someone's culture, that it's not appropriated. And we work with a cultural strategist and cultural expert that is not part of our staff, that is an independent contractor, and they review all applications that could be problematic in terms of appropriation. So I would say that, you know, in my experience with this panel, and I'll bounce it to Tristan. Tristan was a part of the panel process last year. The panelists are really looking at the work and the artist in terms of how they presented themselves and how those two things match up. Tristan, do you have any thoughts to add?
Well, it was actually really fun being a part of just being kind of a fly on the wall for the panelists last year, and we did have panelists of color, and it was really exciting to see them advocate and really kind of share their experiences and what the challenges are, and really checking some of the other panelists. So definitely not just a bunch of old white men looking at art. Definitely try it. And I feel like Charity Summer, the last program officer who was working with IAA and Enzina, did a really fantastic job last year of making sure that the panel did have people of color, did have Indigenous people and people who are familiar with Alaska, and all the panelists also get an overview of Alaska and get an overview of the challenges, both in different regions and culturally, and how Alaska differs so greatly from the lower 48 and what that looks like and what challenges are presented to Alaskans, and not just Alaska Native people, but for other people of color. And so I definitely can speak to that aspect. Seeing some of our panelists check some of the other panelists in terms of how they're talking about things. So their people are very kind of, at least from last year, I can speak to last year, we're really good at making sure that everything was culturally sound, and we do flag all of the applications for cultural appropriation if that's something that we see as an issue. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully that will build some confidence in you guys as artists that we are looking out for creators of color when applying.
I just want to chime in. It was actually, I was also a fly on the wall, and it was astounding how powerful the voices of advocacy were. And also the panelists were looking for that authentic voice, the honesty and the conviction from the artists, and would go to the bat for them. It was really great. So if you have any fears or nervousness about the legitimacy of what you're proposing, you know, give us a holler, but trust yourself, trust the work that you make. They know, the panelists know how to read it.
So I think we went and skipped over a question that was presented earlier by Gail that says, are you still working with Creative Capital? I just wanted to bring that to light.
Thank you, Amable. Thank you, Gail. Yeah, so that brings up some other benefits to the award. And so a few years ago, the foundation started a partnership with Creative Capital, which is this artist professional development organization. We no longer work with them, but a couple of years ago, we started working with the Anchorage Museum. So as part of the award, so in addition to the $7,500 or $18,000 award, we also provide either a day-long intensive workshop or a day-and-a-half-long intensive workshop. This year, it's all going to be virtual, and it's a deep dive into the professional development. So how do you put a portfolio together? How do you reach out to museums or to a gallery? How do you work with an editor? How do you get your work published? So it's a pretty intensive process. And one thing I will note is that we also do some front end work, June 28th. So that's January, I keep saying June. I think I'm missing summer. January 28th, tomorrow, we're doing a hands-on professional development workshop. And so we really encourage you all to attend. The first part of it is just going to be kind of like what we talked about today, an info session, but the last hour and a half is going to be how to put your narrative together. We pull actual 2 out of the 4 questions of the application and we start workshopping them. How do you write an artist statement if you've never done that? How do you write a resume if your past experience doesn't sink in with that very Western approach to an artist resume or CV? So we're going to talk all about that tomorrow. And something that we are really committed to doing, and we're hoping we can do this starting next year, is to take that kind of professional development model that we have been doing with the museum or with organizations like Creative Capital and start offering that to everyone, regardless of whether or not you received an award. And so that's something we're hoping to do starting next year. But some of that we'll be able to provide tomorrow.
There's another question here. Yeah, I'm interested in this one too. How do the panelists react to contemporary art / abstract art? Like I've written some very abstract pieces and like they gone nowhere. Oh, like I did a poetry slam a few years ago, and I had like all these wonderful like metaphors about the art of poetry itself. But then the panelists, none of them were poetry people or teachers of English studies or whatever. So they totally missed when I was talking about cacophonies and rhyming couplets and sonnets and everything. So it was like, and I took their place. So this is some bullshit. That was a good poem, but the panelists, these panelists react to the more abstract works out there that are presented to them.
And I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to bounce it to Tristan or Karen to take a stab before I respond.
In my experience, the panelists in this particular group are so smart and they will not miss it. I think what tends to happen is folks that do abstract work that are just kind of smearing paint around, and can't talk about what they're communicating, that kind of ends up in kind of a back eddy. But folks, like if you know why you're putting that stuff on that page or that canvas or that drum and can talk about that. So in the work samples, you'll upload a work sample and then there's a little box where you can talk about the piece. You can talk about the materials, but you can also include a little punchy pithy thing about what you're getting at. They're smarty pants. It's good.
Tristan?
Yeah, I think I think they, at least from last year, they're pretty kind of receptive. I think it's very difficult to talk about your own work and to explain what you're doing and why you're doing it. A lot of people will just be like, "Yeah, I just do it because I need to," and that's nice, but it's not, you're not presenting your full uh, self to the panelists. So that's it, it is kind of that push and pull, like how, what can I put on here that's going to get me to move forward and also not kind of tokenize my trauma in the process, because a lot of the times, you know, you just kind of put all of your all of your emotions into the work, and then for what, you know, you're not going to get the award. But really, if you look at this as just a way to invest in yourself, regardless of receiving the individual artist award, as a group, as a collaborative fellowship or project award, but this process is investing in yourself as an artist. You're going to have to continue talking about yourself. You're going to have to talk about your art. You're going to have to prove yourself, prove your worth to people, and it sucks, and it's exhausting, and we definitely recognize that, and definitely as creatives, as of color, um, presenting kind of that piece can be really difficult, but reframing it in a way to where you're investing in yourself as an artist. You are making sure that you have all this information down, and even if it doesn't go through with the individual artist award, well, now you have a jumping point for other grants, other grant applications. You're going to continue having to provide artist statements and provide bios and provide narratives throughout your entire career as an artist. So if you start here, even if you don't receive an award, that's just a starting point. It's only going up from here. So I just want to provide kind of that kind of piece to it to empower you guys as artists, and creatives, and just know that this is a competitive process. The panels are very, I kind of like went way off of the question, but the panelists are very well informed and are a diverse panel. And, you know, we can always improve that. I'm not saying that we're perfect in any way in terms of the panel. So that can always be improved, but it's only up from here, you guys.
Yeah, and I'll just say the panel, we get a new panel every year. So every year it's a brand new panel. It's a different group of folks. So it's different people looking. And a lot of the panelists are contemporaries. They're contemporary artists. They're folks who are working in the field now. Some of them have abstract work in their portfolios. So they're tuned into this stuff. And, you know, it's hard for us to gauge the individual reactions to the panelists because they come with their perspective and they come with their own biases to this process and to art making. And we work with them early on to recognize their bias in art. You know, there might be a panelist who just doesn't like still life. You know, like that's just not for me. I don't like it. And so we work with them to acknowledge that early on so that doesn't become a barrier for them to see the richness of the work.
Yeah, and if I could jump in here, not as a as a representative of the process, but as a fellow artist, a creative person, you know, what I am hearing from this question and the conversation is this question of trust. How do I know that, you know, the people who I'm do they really see that investment in myself, or do they, you know, or do they see, you know, just another, you know, creative of color that, you know, put some stuff on some paper and it's like, give me money. And, you know that I have experienced that, and I see a lot of nodding heads. It's like, how do we, you know, and, you know, I guess I just want to, you know, I want to acknowledge that, you know, this is a level of engagement that a lot of us don't put into ourselves because we're not given the opportunity to in our own lives. We have to survive, we have to pay bills, we have to take care of our close ones. And And it's really, really difficult, especially when you think about what a grant could provide and having to take that time to prove yourself when it's like, you should just be able to see me and know that this is serious and this is special to me. So I want to acknowledge that, and you know, that it's unfortunate that these are the systems in which we live. And I'm very, very, very grateful that all of the staff here have taken that time to honor that and to see how we can really make this process equitable for creatives of color, because this is really where it starts. I mean, we can't solve everything right now in this second and moment yet, but parentheses yet. And I'm just grateful for all of you coming, because if we're not asking these questions, I don't know why. I need my laptop is on my pillow, so it keeps going that way. See, I need the grant so I can get one of them tripod things and be all professional and be like, yes, ma'am. But that is a later conversation. I just want to acknowledge that this is hard. I've had to do it by myself, and I pay $26 a month for a website and I get maybe $3 in profit. So, but I am still grateful to have that opportunity, because there's artists out here in Fairbanks that don't even have $26. They don't know what Squarespace is. They don't even know about this grant. And so what can I be doing in my, scrambling of privilege, can I offer to other folks? So I just want to acknowledge and thank you all for that question, because it's real talk.
Thank you.
I do want to say real quick, this application is really robust and there's a bunch of components to it. If you have a file on your computer or in your notebook or whatever, when you get done with this application, you will be able to apply for so many opportunities, because you'll have all these pieces and they'll be ready to go. And we can also connect you with other kinds of funding. It's not just this particular grant. So if you have questions about that, give me a holler, please.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank Rasmussen's. I did their holiday card this year.
Yes, Bonnie.
So I was really grateful and really excited about the exposure that I've gotten from it so far. But I am a contemporary artist. So sometimes when you do applications, I do have a problem describing it, because a lot of it comes from the emotion that I'm feeling at the time. And I'm also sometimes I'm one of those splat and splash painters. And the reason I bring that up, because I did apply for one of the grants some years ago. And when I got my rating back about my art, I was floored. And the only reason I was really floored, because at that time I was also working with an agent out of New York. And I showed her the letter and the rating that I was given at Rasmussen, and she couldn't believe it. So, and I was wondering if it was, at that time, I was wondering if it was because of who I was, or whether it was because of contemporary work. Alaska still is into a lot of the traditional and ethnicity art, which isn't Black art. You still go around, you see a lot of Native Alaskan art, but you don't see Black art. Or what people classify as Black art. And a lot of my pieces, you don't know I'm Black until you meet me. Or if I happen to have a Black painting in one of my shows, but I've been at this in Anchorage for over 50 years, and the progress has been really, really slow.
Bonnie, I'm so glad you spoke up about that, because that's what I'm talking about when it comes to archiving our history. Where's the record of this? And yeah, you see the work but don't know the artist behind the work. And it's important that we know the artists behind the work and their histories and their stories and their narratives. So, and going forward, I'm looking for, I hope I can say this on behalf of all three of us, but BAM will reach out to you, to get your story as we move forward in our work of collecting this data that we need and these stories and these histories. But thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We want to be really respectful of time, and we're 11 minutes over. So Alyssa, if I can turn it over to you to close us out.
Yeah, I think the best feedback I can give Ransom right now is that we on POC time. We always late and we
That
run over it.
part.
So I mean, that's you're gonna get applications at like March 2nd, 12:01. Can I still apply? So I just want to fair warning. I want to thank you all for the extra time that you have given us in this conversation and recognizing that this isn't the first and only conversation. I know that I am, completely and 100% committed to continuing this because this is how we grow our communities here as artists and just as neighbors and friends and close ones. But this is also how we, dismantle these oppressive systems that prevent us from actually being the full artists that we can be, and how we provide that same sort of opportunity to other emerging artists that don't even consider themselves. And I am really excited. I know I'm not a panelist and I won't be able to see, but I really hope that this kind of starts to alleviate some of that distrust, some of that frustration, some of that I don't want to, for lack of better words, sort of suppression. And that for a lot of you, you can, if you have the capacity and the time to take that step, if this is your first time applying and you really want to consider it. So I just am really grateful to, be in connection with you all now and having such an important conversation that will definitely not be the last and will be, the start of a beautiful revolution.
Yeah.
Or continuation of a beautiful revolution, I should say.
Thank you all so much.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Well, let's have a moment of silence about some poetry.
Yay!
Yeah.
All right, I'll start with my little intro piece. It's not cheaper to keep her. I'm a bad mamacita, magnetic radiation going off in your speaker like what? Too many kids, so I'm not gonna cuss. My poetics originate from dark matter. I leave every open mic covered in blood spatter. Hold up, time out, let me turn up the sauna. Baking cakes, I got the sweetness, so call me sugar mama. My lyrics are jelly, so that's why they jam them. Your host is doing the most, is making poetry slam. Back up, give me 50 feet. I'm on the mic to make the cipher complete. Your favorite poetess. Spitting a verse, even if I rhyme so, put the gear in reverse. Your girl over here sparking up mad isms. That's right, you heard me. A cataclysm, an explosion, if you will. So let go and act ill with mahogany. Yes, just like the tree. Magnetic, as in magnetically, with that Bagua style come through. MC for dropping mad clues. So the ball's in your court. What you gonna do next? I done showed you my good side and I'm still vexed. There's nothing wrong. You can't fix me. I'm a lady, but still rip off my clothes like Bill Bixby. Then turn all sexy green on your ass. It's like She-Hulk smash. And your entire paradigm's been terror transformed. Game over. Magnetic wins. Insert coin.